It's the ladder game I just played against a Terran. We go to the very late game here. I'm going to speed through a little bit of the opening just because it's my normal opening. I've seen it in anything I've done probably. Just immediately get a hatchery followed by the gas in the spawning pool. I do go for overlord speed a little bit earlier. I don't actually utilize it to its maximum effect as I could, but it helps me see what my opponent's doing a little bit better. So this SCV is here a little bit early. It's not super early, but it's early enough that I go, oh gee, I wonder if I'm getting rushed, but I don't do anything about it because I've already committed to what I'm doing. Turns out I'm not. My opponent just really wants to see what's going on. Because they built a pretty early command center on the low ground, so they want to see that they're not getting rushed too. Their barracks on the low ground, so it's not going to be able to wall off up here if there was an early rush. You know, I sent my first couple overlords to places they can see. This is the high ground by my opponent's natural. This is high ground behind a potential third base, and then this one is spotting the other potential third base. At some point I get over there and realize my opponent has an expansion, so I can take my third. My opponent sends in some potentially aggressive units here, the Hellions. I'm going to slow this back down to normal game speed now. Just kind of had a very normal first 5 minutes. My opponent's pulling up a few Hellions with the Reaper that they kept alive from the start of the game, but I already have Queens out here to defend. I already made my Baneling nest up here, so I can make some Zerglings into Banelings to really defend this and be fine. See, they have an armory done because they can turn them into Hellbats. Or, yeah, Hellbats. So I've pulled all my Queens to the front, even the one that's normally at the expansion here, because I saw this with my Overlords, which I should really spread out a little bit more. But they get up here, they're greeted by some Queens and some Banelings. So maybe we'll just hold this early aggro. I sent my Overlord back and forth through my opponent's main to see what was going on. I saw what looked like they might be sending a Liberator soon because I saw the starport up here at the front. I saw the second factory, which tells me they're playing Mech. You don't get a second factory this early if you're not playing Mech. So they do end up harassing me a little bit with... I already missed the few kills of the drones up here. Got a couple more drones over here before I actually get this properly defended. I didn't quite react as quickly as I should have. My Spore over here is in not quite the best place. It really needs to be up here or down here, because those are two angles that it's really annoying to have a Liberator fire at your base. I think my Queens get over here and take care of it in a second. Transfuse, get them back up to enough health, and then start making sure to hit my injects again. At some point I also screwed up my hotkeys and all that, so my resources get really high, because every time I try to go back and make more units with my money, I'm actually just selecting my Queens, but I eventually figured out and get that fixed. So my opponent's just keeping a few mech units out on the map. Spot for what's going on. I'm trying to make sure to creep up my bases to get my upgrades, get my Hydralisks, get the Baneling speed, which I think I haven't started yet. I really should have. Yep. At some point I lose track of my upgrades on my ground units too, and this could have been a way easier late game if I had kept getting those. So my opponent's just massing things up for a potential future attack. I'm not quite sure why they have a medevac. Multiple medevacs? Oh, you can load... I guess you can... You can load mechanical units into them, but you normally only see medevacs in any sort of number if they're playing bio, not if they're playing mech. Like, you can use it to spot the high ground, but you don't need multiple medevacs to do that. You only need one. I guess it doesn't hurt to have a second backup just in case, but I know later in the game my opponent has quite a few medevacs, and it really confused me because they're not playing a style that seems like you should have a lot of medevacs with it. I do know that when you turn the Hellions into Hellbats, they are biological in addition to mechanical, so they can be healed by a medevac. But they have such low hit points against my high damage output army that I'm not sure how much that's actually accomplishing. They do end up making me cancel my fourth here, just because I'm not doing the greatest job of positioning my new units. If I had had them over here sooner, I could have probably prevented this. Fortunately, it didn't actually kill my drone, so I'm able to restart this base once I defend the aggression here. They did get blue flame. They got on top of the tank. This just ends their assault for now. You can't pick up sieged tanks, only when they're not sieged. I think I even managed to get this tank too with the Hydras. I haven't gone back and followed up on what my opponent is doing again. But I can see that they're doing a mech army from the units I've seen. I am still keeping an eye on this potential base. Oh yeah, I have an eye on this potential base. I morphed this guy into the Overseer. This is actually probably not the right one to morph into an Overseer. I should have grabbed one of the ones back at home, because this one's actually doing an important job of watching the next potential base for my opponent. So it ends up leaving to join up with my army after doing a bit more scouting. Oh, if the Viking doesn't get it, which I don't remember, may have. Yep. But really, I should have kept that at the base over here to spot if my opponent was taking that base. I am trying to keep an eye on the high ground here. Should really move these Hydras over to a watchtower probably. Just on both sides of the high ground here. This is the most important piece of terrain on this map, because if a meching Terran can set up some siege tanks on this piece of terrain, they can basically push out to this part of the map, to this part of the map, to this part of the map, without much hindrance anymore. So I really can't let them get there. If they get control of this piece of terrain, I've lost this game. So my opponent's just making some defenses at home. Whole lot of factories. Planetary at the third base is a little bit unusual. Not totally that odd, I guess, but it's something I don't see a lot. So I'm taking more bases, because I'm going, okay, you're playing mech, it's going to take a while for you to have a big enough army to win the game. So I'll take advantage of that by also expanding. I should really maybe split off a little bit more of my army and stand it at my new base, because it's pretty vulnerable to Hellion run-bys. So it's good that they're up here. That'll still prevent Hellions from running by this area. But if I could stand them maybe here, that prevents them from running by into this base, as well as into my third base. I do have a little bit of defensive structures, but this is not enough to stop if like 12 Hellions come by. So see, my opponent ends up taking this base, and I did not see it because I morphed the Overlord that used to be here into an Overseer, went to do more scouting, and it died. I never replaced it. Still keeping an eye on this base, so really have an eye on this base as well. So here's my opponent. They got a bunch of Hellions, so they can, transition between Hellbats and Hellions. A couple tanks. Don't quite understand the 4 Medivacs. Liberator. A Viking. I send a little bit more of my army up this way because I know this is the important piece of terrain I need to fight over to have a chance to stay in the game. It's all about not letting my opponent get up on this high ground. My opponent heads right for it. Send their Liberators out a little ahead of the army. They don't siege them up before they get here, so that ends up being free pickoffs for me, which is great. And they're getting up here with all these Hellbats, which I tried to run my Banelings into to deal with them. I have a critical mass of Hydras to also just gun them down a lot. And I really want to go on top of the siege tanks and take them out, because that's what I really can't have, is have the siege tanks siege on this piece of terrain. So my reinforcing Zerglings get here and take care of it. Shot down most of the Medivacs. Don't know if I get this last one or not. Yeah, no, it boosts out just in time. But Mech is super efficient. It's really cost efficient. Constantly have to be trading things as Zerg. And your Terran opponent has, like, their Hellions are super disposable. They're like the equivalent of a Zergling, except they're a lot stronger. But in the Mech army, like, they're the most disposable thing that you have. So I've started transitions to go to further on the game. Already got my hive done. I'm already making a greater spire. I want to eventually make broodlords because I see my opponent doesn't really have any anti-air. And I want to try to catch them off guard before they have a chance to make Thors or Vikings in sufficient number to deal with any air units I make. So this is what I was talking about, leaving the space completely exposed so they just come over here and roast every single drone. I get some Zerglings here, but they kind of got a bad angle. They don't really get us around. They kind of just run into them. The Hydras are good, though. And then the Hellions even continue up here and get some drones at this base as well. But I managed to run a lot of them in time. Still not quite ideal. I think I ended up losing quite a few drones there. Yeah, 16 killed so far this game. 7 was that initial earlier harass. That was 9 more. So here I have my Corruptors. The Greater Spire is just finishing, so I will be able to make them into Broodlords. So that's the plan. The problem is I haven't been upgrading all of my ground units anymore. I need to get the 3rd level of armor. That's very important against Mech. I need to get more melee upgrades because that helps my Zerglings as well as the Broodlings that the Broodlords throw. So I do have some static defense here now for more Hellion run-bys. Maybe I should have a couple behind the mineral line here too. And I'm just standing my army at the other base so that I can't just run by and get my workers all again. I'm making the armor upgrade on the flying units because I want them to have greater survivability. They already are going to deal plenty of damage with Corruptors and Broodlords. So I'm still trying to keep an eye on this piece of terrain because I really, really can't let my opponent get it. So I do morph my Broodlords right here. My opponent's trying to come up and deal with my army. So I do get onto the high ground, but I see, oh, you still don't really have anything that shoots up when I engage this army. So I see my Broodlords, but I can't actually do anything about them because they have currently no units here that shoot to the air. So my Broodlords all hatch, and I'm going to reinforce with stuff on the ground to try to protect them, and a few more Corruptors as well. So I want my Broodlords here to engage the siege tanks, because these are what will destroy all my ground army. And I have the Corruptors picking off these medevacs, which, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even do that. They're just eating up my opponent's supply right now. Still, it gives my opponent information by flying them around, so it's probably good to take them out of the game. So during this, my opponent did run by with some Hellions again, but I have so many resources that I'm just continuing to make units. And even though my Zerglings take a terrible angle there, they still deal damage fast enough, and there's such a large number of Zerglings that it's okay. So if we're looking at another 32, so we've got another 16 drones there. But I really just want to be making army at this point in the game anyhow. I might need to make a few more drones to make sure I have the economy to keep making army, but largely I want to just keep making army. So I'm still chasing out what my opponent's doing. I'm still trying to make sure they don't get this piece of high ground terrain in the middle of the map. Trying to make sure everything gets to attack together. The Broodlords are very slow compared to the other Zerg units. Still never did start my upgrades for the ground units. Should really have the second melee attack done. I should really have +3 armor either done or close to done right now. I didn't start another upgrade for my flyers either. Ideally that would get done, but I'm trying to just get close to max and push out and try to just deal the finishing blow to my opponent here. Make some Banelings in case there's ground army. Get my Corruptors and my Broodlords over here. I use my Corruptor's Caustic Spray ability on the building, on the command center here to destroy it. It deals a small amount of damage at first, and then after a certain number of seconds it goes up dramatically, the damage per second. See there, it got to half up and then suddenly just basically exploded. My opponent's trying to use the Vikings here to take out the Broodlords, but I bring the Corruptors back to deal with it. I see the battle cruisers here, attack those instead. My opponent realizes they are defeated and leaves the game, because I have got just such a huge sky army that they don't have any defense for.